They say a man's weakest moment reveals his true character. Mine came when my testosterone dropped to dangerous levels and my body started falling apart. But it wasn't my illness that nearly destroyed me. It was discovering what my wife was doing while I fought to survive. My name is Ashton Carter. I'm 42 years old, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. I work as a software engineering manager at TechCore Solutions in Austin, Texas. Good job, solid paycheck, respected by my team. I've got 2 kids, Daniel, who just turned 14, and Lily, who's 10. They're my world. And then there's Casey, my wife of 16 years. Or at least, she was my wife. It started about 8 months ago. I've been feeling off for weeks, exhausted all the time, gaining weight despite hitting the gym 5 days a week, zero motivation. I figured it was just the stress of managing a team of 30 engineers, the endless deadlines, the pressure. But when I started waking up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, I knew something was seriously wrong. I made an appointment with Dr. Richard Palmer at Austin Medical Center. He ran a full panel of blood tests, and when the results came back, he didn't sugarcoat it. Your testosterone levels are dangerously low for a man your age, Dr. Palmer said, tapping his pen against my chart. We're talking about levels I'd expect to see in someone 20 years older. I sat there in his office, staring at the numbers on the paper. How bad are we talking? Bad enough that it's affecting every aspect of your health. Your energy, your mood, your metabolism. We need to start treatment immediately. That night, I decided to tell Casey over dinner. We'd always been a team, or so I thought. I figured she'd be supportive, worried even. We sat down at our usual spot in the kitchen. Daniel was at soccer practice. Lily was upstairs doing homework. So, I went to the doctor today, I said, pushing my food around my plate. Casey glanced up from her phone. Oh yeah? Everything okay? I took a breath. Not exactly. Turns out my testosterone levels are really low. Dangerously low, according to Dr. Palmer. She set her phone down, but her expression was strange. Not concerned, not sympathetic. Almost annoyed. What does that mean? She asked. It means I need treatment. Probably testosterone therapy, some lifestyle changes. It explains why I've been feeling so run down. Casey nodded slowly, then picked her phone back up. Well, I'm sure they'll fix it. That was it. No questions about the treatment, no asking how I felt about it. Nothing. She just went back to scrolling through whatever was on her screen. I watched her for a moment, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Casey, I said. She didn't look up. Did you hear what I just said? She sighed, finally meeting my eyes. Yes, Ashton. You have low testosterone. The doctor will treat it. What else do you want me to say? I didn't have an answer for that. So I said nothing, and we finished dinner in silence. That was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, things got stranger. Casey started changing in ways that were subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. She'd always been stylish. Teaching art history meant she had an eye for aesthetics, but now it was different. She spent twice as long getting ready in the mornings, trying on 3 different outfits before settling on one. New dresses appeared in her closet, tighter than what she usually wore. Heels instead of flats. I noticed it one Tuesday morning. She was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, applying lipstick with more care than I'd seen in years. Big presentation today, I asked from the bedroom doorway. Casey glanced at me in the mirror. Just a normal lecture day. What? You're really dressed up. She capped the lipstick and turned to face me. I can't look nice for my students. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Ashton? Her tone had an edge to it. I held up my hands. Nothing. You look great. She brushed past me without another word, grabbing her bag from the kitchen counter. Daniel was eating cereal at the table, barely looking up from his phone. Lily was trying to tie her shoes by the front door. Mom, can you help me? Lily called out. Not now, sweetie. Mommy's running late. Casey kissed the top of Lily's head and headed for the garage. I watched her go, then knelt down to help Lily with her laces. It's okay, I've got you. Thanks, Dad, Lily said, giving me a quick hug before running to grab her backpack. Daniel finally looked up from his phone. Dad, is Mom okay? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? He shrugged, pushing his cereal bowl away. I don't know. She's been acting weird lately. Like, she's never home anymore. I sat down across from him. She's just busy with work. You know how it is during the semester. Daniel didn't look convinced, but he didn't push it either. He grabbed his backpack and headed out the door. I sat there alone in the kitchen, my coffee going cold in my hand. He was right. Casey had been coming home later and later. What used to be occasional evening office hours had turned into a regular thing, 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. She'd walk in around 10 or 11, claiming she'd been helping struggling students prepare for exams or working on research for an upcoming paper. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But then came the phone calls. Casey had never been secretive about her phone before. It used to sit on the kitchen counter while we ate dinner, face up, occasional buzzes from work emails or group texts with her colleagues. Now she kept it in her purse or in her hand, screen facing down. When it rang, she'd glance at it, then leave the room to answer. One night, around midnight, I woke up to the sound of her voice. I could hear her through the bathroom door, soft, almost whispered tones. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the tone. It wasn't a voice she used with colleagues or friends. When she came back to bed, I pretended to be asleep. "Ashton," she whispered. I didn't answer. She slipped under the covers, and within minutes, I could hear her breathing even out as she fell asleep. But I lay there wide awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling that cold knot in my chest grow tighter. Something was very wrong, and I was running out of excuses to ignore it. I got the first call on a Thursday afternoon. I was in the middle of a code review meeting at TechCore when my phone buzzed. It was my buddy Jake Peterson, someone I'd known since college. We played racquetball every other week, grabbed beers when we could. Solid guy. I stepped out of the conference room and answered. "Jake, what's up?" There was a pause on the other end. "Hey man, you got a minute? I need to talk to you about something." The tone in his voice made my gut tighten. "Yeah, shoot. Look, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it. I was at the Roosevelt Room last night, that bar on 5th Street, and I saw Casey there." I leaned against the wall. "Okay." She mentioned meeting some colleagues for drinks. "Ashton." Jake's voice dropped. "She wasn't with colleagues. She was with some young guy, mid-20s maybe, dark hair, preppy looking. And man, they were close. Real close." My hand tightened around the phone. "What do you mean close?" "I mean, she had her hand on his arm. They were laughing, leaning into each other. At first I thought maybe it was innocent, you know? But then he put his hand on her knee, and she didn't move it away. I waited around for a bit, and when they left, they walked out together. I'm sorry, man. I figured you'd want to know." I stood there in the hallway, watching my coworkers through the glass conference room wall, continuing their meeting like the world hadn't just tilted sideways. "You sure it was her?" I asked, knowing it was a stupid question. "Positive." I almost went over to say hi, but something felt off about the whole thing. "I'm really sorry, Ashton." I thanked him and hung up. For the rest of the day, I went through the motions, finished the code review, answered emails, attended a budget meeting. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. That night, Casey came home around 9:30. She walked in carrying her leather bag, heels clicking on her hardwood floor. "Hey," she said, setting her bag down. Long day. I was sitting on the couch, a beer in my hand that I hadn't touched. "How was your evening?" "Fine. Just had some paperwork to catch up on at the office." She moved toward the kitchen. "Have you eaten?" "I'm starving." "Casey, where were you last night?" She stopped, her back still to me. "Last night? I told you. I had drinks with some people from the department." "Which people?" She turned around slowly. "What's with the interrogation?" I stood up, facing her. "I got a call today. From Jake. He saw you at the Roosevelt Room. With a guy. A young guy." Casey's face didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. "Jake needs to mind his own business. So, you're not denying it?" "I'm not denying that I was having a drink with a colleague. One of the graduate TAs needed some career advice. That's all it was." "Jake said you were all over each other." Her expression hardened. "Jake is mistaken. Or maybe he'd had too many drinks himself. I can't believe you're accusing me of something based on gossip from your drinking buddy." She stormed upstairs before I could respond. I stood there in the living room, my beer still untouched, and realized something. She hadn't asked me who the guy was. She hadn't seemed surprised or confused. She'd gone straight to defense mode. That's when I knew Jake wasn't wrong. 2 days later, I got another call. This time from Mark Sullivan, a guy I knew from the gym. We weren't close friends, but we spotted each other on bench press and talked about sports between sets. "Ashton, I hate to be the bearer of bad news," Mark said, "but I saw your wife yesterday. At Zilker Park. She was with some guy, sitting on a blanket near the trail. I was running past and almost stopped to say hi, but they were kissing." I closed my eyes. You're sure it was her? Positive, man. I'm really sorry. 3 different people. 3 different sightings. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. That night, I made a decision. I waited until Casey was asleep. Then I carefully took her phone from the nightstand. My hands were shaking as I tried to unlock it, but the passcode I knew, our anniversary, didn't work. She'd changed it. I set the phone back down and went to my office. I opened my laptop and pulled up our cell phone account online. I had access to the call logs, and what I found made my blood run cold. Pages and pages of calls and texts to numbers I didn't recognize. Some conversations went on for hours, starting late at night, and continuing until 2 or 3 in the morning. There were names I'd never heard her mention. Justin, Bradley, someone listed only as MR. I sat back in my chair, the evidence laid out in front of me in black and white. This wasn't just one affair. This was multiple men, multiple betrayals. I thought about confronting her right then, waking her up and demanding answers. But something stopped me. If I confronted her now, she'd just lie again. She'd gaslight me, tell me I was being paranoid, twist everything around until I was the one apologizing. No, if I was going to do this, I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. The next morning, I called in sick to work. After Casey left for the university and the kids were at school, I drove across town to a small office on Burnett Road. The sign outside read, Harrison Investigations, discreet and professional. Frank Harrison was exactly what I expected. Mid-50s, graying hair, the weathered look of someone who'd seen it all. He'd been a cop for 20 years before going private. His office was cramped but organized, walls covered with licenses and certifications. Mr. Carter, he said, shaking my hand. What can I do for you? I sat down across from his desk. I think my wife is cheating on me. I need proof. Frank didn't seem surprised. He probably heard that line 10 times a week. He pulled out a notepad. Tell me everything. I laid it all out. The changed behavior, the late nights, the calls from friends, the phone records. Frank listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, he sat back in his chair. I'll be straight with you. Based on what you're telling me, your instincts are probably right. The good news is, if she's being this sloppy about it, gathering evidence won't be hard. What do you need from me? Her schedule, her usual routines, vehicle information, recent photos. I'll put surveillance on her, see where she goes, who she meets. If something's happening, I'll document it. I pulled out my phone and started sharing information. Within 30 minutes, Frank had everything he needed. I'll start tomorrow, he said, walking me to the door. Give me 2 weeks. If she's cheating, I'll have proof. I shook his hand. Thank you. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. Casey thought she was getting away with it. Thought I was too trusting or too stupid to notice. She was wrong. Frank Harrison worked fast. Within 3 days, he called me with his first report. I was at my desk at TechCore, staring at lines of code that might as well have been written in another language for all the attention I could give them. Mr. Carter, Frank's voice came through the phone, professional and direct. I've got something you need to see. Can you meet me at my office in an hour? My stomach dropped. That fast? Your wife isn't being careful. This won't take long. I told my team I had a doctor's appointment and drove to Frank's office. When I walked in, he had a laptop open on his desk, along with a thick folder. Have a seat, Frank said, his expression neutral. He'd probably delivered this kind of news 100 times, but it never got easier for the person receiving it. He opened the folder first. Inside were photographs, time-stamped, high resolution, undeniable. Casey walking into an apartment building on West 6th Street. Casey sitting in an outdoor cafe with a young man, their hands intertwined across the table. Casey and the same man walking out of a hotel near the university. That's from yesterday afternoon, Frank said, pointing to the hotel photo. She told you she had office hours, right? I nodded, my throat tight. She was in that hotel for 2.5 hours. Same guy from the cafe. His name is Justin Winters, graduate student in her department, 26 years old. Frank clicked on his laptop, and video footage began playing. Casey and Justin entering the hotel lobby, laughing, his hand on her lower back. There's more, Frank continued, pulling out another set of photos. Different guy. Met him at Mozart's Coffee on Tuesday evening. This one was older, maybe 30. Dark hair, well-dressed. The photos showed them sitting close on the outdoor patio, her hand on his shoulder. Bradley Chun, Frank said, reading from his notes. Assistant professor in the English department. Divorced, 1 kid. I felt like I was watching my life burn down in real time. How many are there? Frank's expression softened slightly. So far, I've documented 3 different men. But based on her pattern and the phone records you provided, I'd estimate there could be more. She's been doing this for a while, Ashton. This isn't new. He showed me more GPS tracking data, showing her car at various locations that didn't match her claim schedule. Text message metadata, showing hundreds of late-night communications. Hotel receipts, charged to a credit card I didn't know she had. What do I do with all this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Frank closed the laptop and slid the folder across to me. That's up to you. But if you're thinking about divorce, this is more than enough evidence. No judge is going to side with her after seeing this. I picked up the folder. Its weight somehow heavier than it should have been. Keep watching her. I want to know everything. You sure? Some guys prefer not to know all the details. I met his eyes. I'm sure. I want every single detail documented. Frank nodded. I'll keep on it. Give me another week. I left his office with a folder under my arm, feeling like I was carrying a bomb. The Casey I'd married, the mother of my children, didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. A week later, Frank handed me another folder. This one was even thicker. You were right to tell me to keep digging, he said as I sat down in his office. There are more. He laid out the new evidence methodically. A 4th man, some adjunct professor from another university Casey had met at a conference. A 5th, a graduate student she'd been tutoring privately. The photos were all the same. Intimate dinners, hotel visits, secret meetings. But the worst part wasn't the number of men. It was how calculated it all was. Frank had tracked her movements for 2 full weeks, and every single late night at the office had been a lie. Every faculty meeting had been a cover. She had a system, rotating between different men on different nights, keeping them all separate so none of them knew about the others. She's running this like a business, Frank observed, sorting through the timeline he'd created. Tuesday and Thursday nights, Justin. Monday and Wednesday, Bradley. Weekends are more flexible. She'll see whoever's available. I stared at the evidence, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest where my heart used to be. What about the kids? While I'm traveling for work. Frank pulled out another report. I checked those dates. When you were in California for that tech conference last month, she had Justin stay over at your house. 2 nights. In my house. In my bed. While my children slept down the hall. I need to see a lawyer, I said. I know a good one. Rebecca Thompson. She handles high-stakes divorces, and she doesn't lose. Frank gave me her number, and I called from his office. Rebecca could see me that afternoon. Her office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel. Rebecca herself was mid-50s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that made you sit up straighter. She listened to my story without interrupting, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Mr. Carter, you've done something very smart by gathering this evidence before confronting your wife. Most men confront first and regret it later. You have an airtight case here. What are my options? With this level of infidelity and the documented evidence, you're in the driver's seat. Texas is a community property state, but infidelity can influence how property is divided, especially when it comes to marital waste, money she spent on these affairs. We can also use this for custody arrangements if needed. I want primary custody, I said immediately. She's been lying to our kids just as much as she's been lying to me. Rebecca nodded. We can make that happen. The question is, how do you want to proceed? Quick and surgical, or do you want her to see it coming? I thought about Daniel's question. Is Mom okay? I thought about Lily asking for help with her shoes while Casey rushed out to meet another man. I thought about 14 years of marriage that had apparently meant nothing to her. I want to disappear, I said. I want to file, serve her the papers, and be gone before she even knows what hit her. Rebecca smiled. Not a warm smile, but an approving one. I can work with that. Give me 3 days to file the paperwork. In the meantime, start moving your assets. Open a separate bank account. Transfer funds. Document everything you own. And whatever you do, don't let her know you suspect anything. She has no idea. Good. Keep it that way. The element of surprise is your greatest weapon right now. I left Rebecca's office feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Powerful. Casey thought she was getting away with it. She thought I was too busy with work, too trusting, too naive to notice. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. Rebecca moved fast. Within 72 hours, she had everything ready. Divorce papers filed with the court, asset protection in place, custody arrangements drafted. Now came the hard part, executing the plan without tipping off Casey. I started moving money carefully, not all at once. That would raise red flags, but in increments that looked normal. Transferred funds to a new account at a different bank, one Casey knew nothing about. I documented every shared asset we owned. The house, the cars, investment accounts, even the furniture. Rebecca wanted a complete inventory. "You're being thorough," she said during one of our meetings. "That's good. Most clients are too emotional to think this clearly. I'm running on anger right now," I admitted. "That's keeping me focused." The hardest part was acting normal at home. Every night, I'd come home to Casey making dinner or grading papers, pretending everything was fine. She'd kiss me on the cheek, ask about my day, help the kids with homework. The performance was flawless. One evening, she was particularly affectionate. She made my favorite meal, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, and we ate dinner as a family. Daniel talked about his upcoming soccer tournament. Lily showed us a drawing she'd made in art class. It almost felt normal, like the life we used to have. After the kids went to bed, Casey poured 2 glasses of wine and sat next to me on the couch. "I feel like we haven't really talked in a while," she said, her hand on my knee. I looked at her, this woman I'd spent 16 years with, and felt nothing. "We talk every day." "That's not what I mean. I mean really talked. About us." I took a sip of wine, keeping my expression neutral. "What about us?" She hesitated, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes, guilt, maybe, or fear. "I know things have been strained since your diagnosis. I haven't been as supportive as I should have been. I'm sorry about that." The apology was too little, too late, and completely meaningless given what I knew. But I couldn't let her see that. "It's okay," I said, the lie coming easily. "We've both been stressed." She smiled, relieved, and leaned her head on my shoulder. "I love you, Ashton. I know I don't say it enough." I stared at the wall across from us, Casey's head warm against my shoulder, and felt absolutely nothing. "I love you too." 3 days later, everything was ready. Rebecca called me at work with a final confirmation. "Papers are filed. Process server is standing by. When do you want to do this?" Rebecca asked. "Tomorrow. Friday. She has classes all morning, then office hours in the afternoon. Serve her at her office at 2 p.m. "And you?" "I'll be gone by noon. I'm moving into a furnished rental across town. Already have movers scheduled." "What about the kids?" "They'll be at school when it happens. I'll pick them up afterward and explain everything. I've already talked to a family therapist about how to handle it." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "You've thought of everything." "I've had plenty of time to plan." That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed next to Casey, listening to her breathe, knowing this was the last night I'd ever spend under the same roof with her. Tomorrow, everything would change. Friday morning came. Casey got up early, like always, spent an hour getting ready. She kissed me goodbye at the door, completely oblivious. "Have a good day," she said, smiling. "You too." The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I called the movers. They arrived within an hour, and we worked quickly. I took only what was mine: clothes, personal items, my office equipment. I left the furniture, the photos, everything that belonged to our shared life. By 11:30, the house was clear to my presence. I left my keys on the kitchen counter, next to a note that simply said, "Check your office at the university." Then I walked out the door and didn't look back. At exactly 2 p.m., Rebecca texted me. "Papers served." She knows. I was sitting in my new rental apartment, sparse and temporary, but mine. My phone started ringing within minutes. Casey's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. She called again, and again. By the time I silenced my phone, she called 11 times. Then came a text. "Ashton, what is this? Call me right now. This is insane. We need to talk. Where are you?" I didn't respond. Rebecca had been clear. No contact until the legal strategy was set. An hour later, my phone rang with a different number. "Daniel." "Dad." His voice was shaky. "Mom just came home freaking out. She's crying and throwing things." "What's going on?" My heart sank. I hadn't wanted the kids to see her like this. "Where's Lily?" "Upstairs in her room." Dad, what happened? I'm coming to get you both. Pack a bag. You're staying with me for a few days. Dad. Daniel, trust me. Pack a bag. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I drove to the house faster than I should have. When I pulled up, Casey's car was in the driveway. Through the window, I could see her pacing in the living room, phone pressed to her ear. I walked in without knocking. Casey spun around when she heard the door. Ashton. Her eyes were red, mascara streaked down her face. What the hell is this? She held up the divorce papers, her hand shaking. It's exactly what it looks like. You can't just leave. We have a family. We can work through this. I kept my voice level calm. Work through what, Casey? Your affairs with multiple men? The lying? The sneaking around? Her face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder Frank had sent me. Photos, videos, evidence. I held it up so she could see. Justin Winters. Bradley Chun. 3 others whose names I can't even remember because there were so many. Hotels, apartments, restaurants. Should I keep going? Casey's mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time since this whole thing started, she had no lies ready. I hired a private investigator. I continued. I have documentation of everything. Every lie, every meeting, every hotel room. It's all in those divorce papers you're holding. Ashton, please. Daniel. Lily. Let's go. I called up the stairs. Both kids came down, backpacks on their shoulders. Daniel looked between his mother and me, his face confused and angry. Lily was crying. Casey stepped toward them. Kids, your father is being irrational. Don't. I said, my voice hard. Don't you dare lie to them too. Daniel's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Lily just cried harder. I put my hands on both their shoulders. Come on. We're leaving. You can't take my children. Casey shouted. There are children. And according to the temporary custody arrangement in those papers, they're staying with me until the court hearing. You want to fight that? Call your lawyer. I guided Daniel and Lily toward the door. Casey stood frozen in the living room, the divorce papers crumpled in her hand, watching her family walk away. As we got in the car, I heard her voice one last time, broken and desperate. Ashton, please. I started the engine and drove away, my kid silent in the back seat, my marriage officially over. 3 months later, I walked into the Travis County Courthouse with Sarah Mitchell by my side. Yes, that's Sarah, the nurse who'd taken care of me during my treatment at Del Seaton Medical Center. We'd stayed in touch after my discharge, coffee meetings that turned into dinners, long conversations that reminded me what it felt like to be with someone honest. We weren't officially dating, but there was something there, something real. And today, I wanted Casey to see that I'd moved on. Rebecca met us at the entrance, briefcase in hand. Ready, more than ready, I said. The courtroom was exactly as I'd imagined. Wood paneling, high ceilings, the kind of place where lives got divided up and futures decided. Casey was already there with her lawyer, sitting at the defendant's table. She looked thinner than I remembered, tired. When she saw me walk in with Sarah, her face went completely pale. I watched her mouth open slightly, trying to form words that wouldn't come. Sarah noticed too and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. She looked speechless, Sarah whispered. Good, I replied. The hearing began. Rebecca presented our case with surgical precision. Every photo, every document, every piece of evidence Frank had gathered. Casey's lawyer tried to mount a defense, claiming the affairs were a result of my emotional unavailability during my health crisis, but it fell flat. Then came the testimony. Daniel, now 15, had chosen to speak. The judge allowed it given his age. Your Honor, Daniel said, his voice steady despite his nervousness. My mom lied to us every day. She missed my soccer games, my sister's recitals, family dinners. Also, she could be with other people. My dad was sick, and instead of helping him, she made everything worse. I want to live with my dad. Casey started crying, but Daniel didn't look at her. The judge reviewed the evidence, listened to the arguments, and made her ruling. I got primary custody of both kids. The house, 70% of our assets. Casey would pay child support and cover 40% of my legal fees. No alimony. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo forever. Outside the courthouse, Casey caught up to us on the steps. She looked broken, desperate. Ashton, please, she said, her voice shaking. Can we just talk? Just 5 minutes. I stopped and turned to face her. Sarah stood beside me, close but not possessive. Casey's eyes darted between us, and I saw the moment reality finally hit her. There's nothing to talk about, I said calmly. You made your choices. Now you live with them. But the kids will be fine. They'll see you according to the custody schedule. Beyond that, we're done. Casey's face crumbled. She reached out as if to touch my arm, but I stepped back. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. So am I said. I'm sorry I wasted 16 years. I took Sarah's hand, and we walked down the courthouse steps together. Behind us, I could hear Casey sobbing, but I didn't turn around. That chapter of my life was closed. You okay? Sarah asked as we reached my car. I looked back one last time. Casey was standing alone on those courthouse steps, exactly where she deserved to be. Yeah, I said, meaning it. I really am. 8 months after the divorce was finalized, life had found a new rhythm. Daniel and Lily had adjusted better than I'd hoped. We moved into a larger place in Mueller, a neighborhood with good schools and parks where Lily could ride her bike. Daniel had made the varsity soccer team and was thriving. The testosterone treatment had worked. I felt like myself again, energized, focused, stronger. I'd even gotten a promotion at Tech Corps, leading a new division. The illness that had once seemed like a curse had actually saved me. If I hadn't gotten sick, I might never have noticed what Casey was doing. Sarah and I had been officially together for 4 months now. She was everything Casey wasn't. Honest, present, genuinely caring. She got along great with the kids. Lily called her Miss Sarah and had started asking when she'd be moving in. We weren't rushing, but we also weren't pretending this wasn't serious. One Saturday afternoon, I was teaching Daniel how to change the oil in my car when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I heard you're engaged. Congratulations. I hope she makes you happy. Casey. I'd changed my number months ago, but she'd clearly found a way to reach me. Daniel noticed my expression. Mom. Yeah. What did she say? I showed him the text. Daniel rolled his eyes. She's not even getting her facts right. You're not engaged. Not yet, I said with a small smile. He looked at me, surprised. Wait, are you thinking about it? Maybe. Eventually. When the time's right. Daniel grinned. Sarah's cool. Way better than Mom. I ruffled his hair. Don't say that. It's true, though. Sarah actually shows up. She came to my last 3 games. Mom hasn't come to one since the divorce. He was right. Casey had visitation rights, every other weekend and Wednesday dinners, but she'd canceled more often than not. Always an excuse. Always something more important. That evening, Sarah came over for dinner. She'd brought ingredients to make her famous lasagna, and Lily helped her in the kitchen while Daniel and I set the table. It felt natural, easy, like a family. After dinner, Sarah and I sat on the back porch while the kids watched a movie inside. You got a text from Casey today, she said. It wasn't a question. How'd you know? You had that look. Like you'd stepped in something unpleasant. I laughed. She thinks we're engaged. Are we? Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow, playfully. Not yet. But Sarah. I turned to face her. I'm not looking to rush into anything. I just got out of a 16-year disaster. But I want you to know that this, what we have, it's real for me. She took my hand. It's real for me too. And I'm not going anywhere. We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over Austin. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Casey. Probably. I didn't even look at it. That life was over. This life, the one I'd built from the ashes of my marriage, was just beginning. I had my kids, my health, my career, and someone who actually valued me. Casey had taught me an important lesson. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing. Her betrayal had freed me from a relationship that was slowly suffocating me. Her lies had forced me to rebuild myself into someone stronger. I thought I was losing everything. Turns out, I was just making room for something better. Daniel came outside. Dad, Lily wants to know if we can get ice cream. Sure, why not? Sarah stood up. I'll drive. As we piled in her car, all 4 of us laughing about something Lily said, I realized this was happiness. Not the performance of happiness I'd had with Casey, but the real thing. And I was never letting it go.